Cloud computing has become an ideal way for enterprises to host and deploy their web applications. Deploying applications on AWS helps us harness strengths of cloud computing like elasticity, scalability, security, and more. In this video, we'll review how to configure and deploy Logi Studio on AWS using a Linux EC2 instance. Let's start by logging onto our AWS account and creating an EC2 instance for our web application. For security purposes, I won't be showing my login information. After you are logged in, let's create an instance by clicking Launch Instance. For this training, let's use an Amazon Linux instance 64-bit. On this page, select t2.micro. Here, we need to make sure that the new instance is accessible from the internet. You can do this by using a public subnet. Click Next, and let's leave everything as default in the Add Storage and Add Tag sections. Now we'll need to set security. AWS security groups act as a virtual firewall for your instance to control inbound and outbound traffic. You can either use an existing security group or create a new one, which we will do here. We'll name our security group Logi Test. Next, open the following ports in the security group. The first is SSH, protocol TCP, port range 22, source anywhere. This port is needed to be able to access the instance remotely. The next type is HTTPS, protocol TCP, port range 443, source anywhere. This port is only needed if you want to access the web over secure socket layer. If you do not need to connect over SSL, it is not needed. The third is HTTP, protocol TCP, port range 80, source anywhere. This port is needed if the web server is listening to port 80. If we are listening to port 8080, then 80 is not needed. The last is a custom TCP, protocol TCP, port range 8080, source anywhere. This port is needed to connect to Tomcat. For this training, we will open access to the EC2 to the world, but the best practice is to lock this down to a specific source. Select Launch. Choose one of your existing key pairs to launch this instance. Let's wait for the instance to get launched. To connect to the EC2 instance from a Windows machine, we will use PuTTY, an open source terminal emulator. Before logging into the instance, you need to convert your key pair from a PEM to a PPK file. We will use PuTTYGen to do this on our local Windows computer. Start PuTTYGen, choose Load, and select the desired key. We will save this key in a PPK format instead of a PEM format. We will use it later on to connect to our instance. Next, let's go back to the AWS Management Console and copy the host name of the instance. Then open PuTTY and paste the host name into the host name section. Then, on the left menu, select Connection, then SSH, then Authentication. In the private key file for authentication, click Browse and select the key that you use when launching the instance. For Login As, type EC2-user and click Enter. Type sudo yum update to apply all OS updates. Now the updates are complete and we are connected to the instance. We will use Apache Tomcat 8 as a web server, but first we need to make sure that Tomcat 8 is installed. You can run this command to check if Tomcat 8 is installed. Sudo service tomcat 8 status. If it is not installed, which it isn't here, you can install using this command. Now that it's installed, we need to start the Tomcat 8 service by running the command sudo service tomcat 8 start. After this, you can make sure that Tomcat 8 web server is running by browsing to the following address. The first section is the DNS of our EC2 instance, and the port 8080 is used by Apache. As you can see here, it's running. Let's start testing by creating a report. When we are finished, we will run the report from outside the EC2 instance. We've created a sample application in Logi Studio. We need to store this application in a Git repository to be cloned inside the Linux EC2 instance. Let's clone the sample Logi Java application repository inside the following folder. Now let's clone the web app folder by running the following command. Please note that you can also run the command sudo yum install git if git is not installed already. Let's clear the command line for the next step. Now you need to make sure that the Tomcat has full permissions for RD data cache and RD download folders. To do this, navigate to your application and run the following commands. Don't forget to add the proper license to the instance. Now our application is cloned to the web apps folder and we are ready to test. Let's try accessing the report from outside the EC2 instance from your local machine. Enter this URL into your local machine browser and navigate to the report. The first section of the URL is the EC2 instance public IP address. During Tomcat installation, we use the default setup. Tomcat by default runs on port 8080, however, you can configure Tomcat to work on different ports. We will explain how this can be done in future videos. As you can see, the report is running as it should.